Max Verstappen has managed to aggravate a lot of souls in the sport after his latest drive in Austin and Mexico. However, it seems like the drivers are having none of it, as they've agreed that there needs to be a change, an immediate one, to his approach to racing. With the championship battle so close, and with P4 theoretically still being able to win the championship in the last 4 rounds in 2 sprint events, will Verstappen change how he races? And if not, will he face harsher penalties from the stewards? One of the most important topics after the last 2 rounds is Verstappen's approach to racing. And while he respected the rules in Austin by being ahead of the apex in his defensive maneuvers against Norris and Sainz on multiple occasions, that was not the case in Mexico. Many feel like the 2 10-second penalties he's received were too harsh, especially given the fact that they came from stewards that tend to be biased towards Red Bull's rivals, Tom Mayer, the son of the founder of McLaren, and Johnny Herbert, who had a lot to talk about with Verstappen's swearing manners. Be that as it may, the drivers are now in common agreement that this type of racing shouldn't go on, because it's effectively ruining somebody's race. If Norris got safely ahead of Verstappen in turn 8, he would have likely challenged Sainz for the win. As we saw that in the second stint, the McLaren became more and more alive once the car started to become lighter. When talking about this, George Russell has gone on to say, "I think the stewards are totally on board with what needs to change. Our view is, I think the biggest discussion is that they wanted to wait until 2025. So it's something consistent through this year. I would say 19 out of 20 drivers said, well, if it's correct, make the change today." I'm glad to see those incidents were punished, and I suspect moving forward in Brazil, what we saw in Mexico and what we saw in Austin, you won't be able to get away with. 19 out of 20. We're all aligned on where it needs to be. Obviously, when it comes to implementing changes right away, the FIA is always lenient because they need to review the process of racing and label it as a dangerous one. Because if you were to ask Horner and Marco, the penalty regarding the Turn 4 incident was too harsh, as Norris approached it with a 15 km/h faster than his fastest lap. While this was aided by the DRS effect of the MCL38, Horner made sure to bring evidence to the FIA that now the rules have kind of changed, and the man who's outside the track somehow has the advantage over the driver who's attacking the apex from the inside, which was never the case. A common agreement is that the rules need to change, and according to Horner, what happened in Mexico while being unnecessary regarding the Turn 8 incident is something that could have been avoided when it comes to the Turn 4 actions of Verstappen. But it's hard to defend the 3-time world champion because he himself said that had he not done what he did, he wouldn't have received the penalty, but he would have seen Norris win the race, which would have taken an additional 7 points from him in the championship. When talking about the rule change, Horner said, "I think the rules are something that really does need to get tidied up moving forward, because there's a great race going on. I think it's just important that the rules of engagement are fair rather than giving an advantage to the outside line, which was always in the history of motorsport. Being on the outside has always been the more risky place to be, but now it's almost the advantage because all you've got to do is have your nose ahead of the point that's irrelevant whether you're going to make the corner or not. It's frustrating. You don't want to have to consult a rulebook on every single overtake or defense. All of these guys have grown up doing a lot of racing and understand the principles of that. I think it's just important that we don't over-regulate into a point where you encourage a behavior that's not within the guidelines of motor racing." Verstappen himself said that he's not too worried about the 20-second penalty as much as he's worried about the pace of the car, because now he has to fight 2 Ferraris and 2 McLaren drivers, as we cannot always count on Piastri being as poor performing as he was in the previous 2 races. The Aussie would have to pick up the pace, and therefore he would need a lot of work to do in order to help his team in the Constructors' Championship and the quest of his teammate to win the maiden championship in McLaren. Be that as it may, these are antics that have been going on for quite some time, and in 2021 we've seen Verstappen running his rivals off the track and plunging on the inside many times. But at that time it was labelled as competitive and hard racing. We cannot help but recall the 2021 edition of Interlagos, where both Verstappen and Hamilton have run off the track because of Verstappen not having the intention to make the corner. But that seems to not be respected from now on, and every similar manoeuvre will be punished with a 10-second penalty, which is recommended in the FIA book for quite some time. The thing with Verstappen is that he knows the rulebook so well, and he himself admitted that he understands every sentence when it comes to racing. So if changes are to come, he will be ready to accept them and to make sure to implement them in his racing portfolio. But there's no doubt that his style will be very hard to change, and Horner has confirmed that regardless of what's done outside of the track, Verstappen will remain the hard racer he is and won't give anyone an easy life if they're in a position to get past him. Elaborating further on this, the father of the three-time world champion has agreed with Horner, as he went on to say, "Max is not going to change his driving style because there are a few stewards present now who are not comfortable with him anyway." This is a bit of a bold statement for Jos, and we know how bold he can be in his statements when it comes to Verstappen and the current situation in Red Bull. But there are many who are not agreeing with how Verstappen has raced and why the penalties were given the way they were. Toto Wolff, for example, praised Max for always respecting the rules and showing why he's a three-time world champion, but stated that the 20-second penalty is very much deserving, and therefore the changes that have been implemented in Mexico, or more precisely, the attitude of the stewards shown there, will definitely push Verstappen and Red Bull in a different direction once they're under pressure. When giving his verdict on the entire situation with Verstappen's racing attitude, Wolff said, "A driver will always push to the limit, and when the rules or the interpretations of the rules allows a certain way of racing, a driver like Max is always going to exploit it." Now there's been a new interpretation, an execution of those regulations, and I think it will change the way everyone races in the future, and you won't see that anymore. I think the stewards today decided that they don't want to see drivers pushing each other off the track. That will be the new normality. All drivers will be very aware that if you do that, you risk a 5 or 10-second penalty. I think back in the day, certain stewards had their opinion, and because it wasn't penalised, it basically legitimated it. Fair enough to have a driver who drives within the regulations and utilises all the margins that are given to them by the stewards. The problem is that Verstappen has always entered these combats with a mindset of make it or break it, as if either I'm making the corner or no one is. We've seen that on many occasions back when the championship was getting feisty in 2021. But now it looks like the FIA is not really keen on welcoming that type of behaviour from the three-time world champion, who sits 47 points ahead of Norris and who is likely to take a 5-place penalty for the Interlagos GP due to the fact that he will have to see an engine component of his internal combustion engine changed. When talking about receiving what he had coming for him for so long, Norris went on to say, "I go into every race expecting a tough battle with Max. It's clear it doesn't matter if he wins or finishes second. His only job is to beat me in the race. He'll sacrifice himself to do that like he did today. I want to have those tough battles like I've seen him have plenty of times, but fair ones. It's always going to be tough with Max. He's never going to make anyone's life easy, especially mine at this point of the year. But I think today was not fair, clean racing. Therefore, I think he got what he was coming to him. Today I feel like I had to avoid collisions, and that's not what you feel like you want to do in a race. He's in a very powerful position in the championship. He is a long way ahead and he has nothing to lose. People can say it's the other way around, like he's got everything to lose and it's all for me, but it's not the case. With all this in mind, do you think that Verstappen needs to change his approach to racing? And if so, do you think that the stewards in Mexico will help him steer in the right direction? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the current Red Bull drama revolving around the second seat, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.